All right, let's make some cheesy potato soup. First, you're gonna start with some bacon. I love the Kirkland bacon. I think it is delicious. And you're gonna want half a pound of bacon. This bacon was in my freezer and I put it in my microwave for just a few minutes to soften up, but it's easier to chop if it's frozen because it slices really easy. So first you're just gonna slice your bacon into chunks. Okay, so now you're gonna add your bacon to a large pot. And I just scrape the bacon in there and the pot is on. And so you'll start to hear it sizzle and you're gonna cook the bacon until it's nice and crispy. As it cooks, you're just gonna break the bacon up into pieces and just continue to stir it. While the bacon is cooking, next we're gonna chop up our onion. I like to use half of a yellow onion and I just like to chop it up into small pieces. Once your onion is all chopped, just set that aside and we will use it in just a bit. All right, let's check on the bacon and see how it's doing. It's starting to crisp up a little bit, but still not really well. We also don't mind if the bacon sticks to the pan a little bit because all that bacon stuff on the bottom is going to make the soup even more delicious. All right, while the bacon is still continuing to cook, we're gonna cut up our potatoes. I have here about 10 russet potatoes, about a medium size, and you're just gonna cut them into about 1/2-inch chunks. It's just perfect little bite-sized pieces. You don't want huge pieces because you don't wanna have to cut them up in your soup. You wanna just be able to enjoy it and eat it. All right, once your potatoes are all chopped, we're gonna check on the bacon again. Oh, the bacon looks awesome. Look how nice and crispy, and you've got pieces stuck to the bottom, which is actually really good. Please ignore the ugly 30-year-old hot pad. I just don't think I've ever gotten a new one since I got married, but it does the trick. So we've got nice crispy bacon, looking really, really good. And you want it really crispy because you're gonna add it back to the soup and it softens up once it gets in the soup. So now we are going to remove the bacon from the pan because it's nice and crispy. So I turn down the heat and I get some tongs. They work the best because you wanna leave as much of the fat from the bacon in the pan as possible. Okay, once you've removed all the bacon from the pan but left behind the bacon grease, you're gonna take your onions that are all chopped up and you're gonna pour them into the pot. Oh, listen to that sizzle. That's such a good sound. And you're gonna have your pot about on medium and you're just gonna stir those and start cooking those onions probably about 5 minutes until they get nice and translucent. As you cook them, the bits from the bottom of the bacon bits from the bottom of the pan that are stuck on will start to release and cook up into the onions, which makes lovely part of the stock. That's part of what makes this soup so delicious. Oh, I wish you could smell this. There's nothing like the smell of onions cooking in bacon grease. Smells delicious. So once the onions are nice and soft, you're going to add a 1/2 cup of flour to the onion and the bacon grease mixture. And you're gonna mix that all together and it's gonna kind of clump up and make kind of a paste. If you have more grease, then it won't make as paste. And if you have less grease, then it kind of clumps up even more. But it doesn't really matter. Just get that stirred in there. Once you have the flour stirred in decently with the onions and all clumped up, then you are going to add your potatoes. Now this pot's getting nice and full. So once you have your potatoes in there, you're just gonna stir it around so that the flour mixture gets distributed around a little bit into the pot, just a little around the potatoes. And then you are going to add water, and you're gonna put in enough water so it just covers the potatoes. I added about 1.5 quarts of water to my pot. Everybody's will be a little bit different, but that's how much I added to mine. Okay, once you've added the water, then you're gonna stir it up so that the flour mixture can dissolve into the water. And you're just gonna get that stirred up nicely. Okay, so next you're gonna get out some Better Than Bouillon chicken flavor, and I love this stuff. And you're just gonna add a nice big spoonful of this to the soup mix. And I just, there you go. That's the spoonful I like. And you just wiggle it off right into the soup mixture. I have to laugh at myself as I make this soup. So here you're gonna add a little bit of salt, probably about maybe 2 teaspoons of salt, maybe 3 teaspoons. But I laugh at this because my sweet mother-in-law is the one who asked me for this recipe. And I was like, yeah, and I'll just write it down real quick. Well, I write it all down for her. And then as I try, and she was a little bit confused on some things, and I'm like, why are you confused on it? Then I listen and watch myself make soup, add some pepper here too. And there's no wonder that I couldn't write it all down. It's a little confusing. So a big spoonful of this and a shaker of that. That's just kind of how I roll. So here's the video for her. All right, now you're gonna place a lid on it. I don't like to place it on all the way. I like to let it vent off a little like that, and you're just gonna let it simmer. Now we're gonna grate the cheese. Now, I don't like to use pre-grated cheese in the soup. It adds weird things, which I don't know what those weird things are, but it makes the soup not work as well. So yes, I will grate my own cheese. So you see, this is just a chunk of cheese, and you're just gonna grate it all up until you have a big old plate full of cheese. A big old plate of cheese. All right, now we're gonna check on our soup. Now, the soup has been simmering for probably about 15 minutes, and I've stirred it every once in a while so that I make sure the potatoes aren't sticking to the bottom, which can happen. And then I wanna test my potatoes, and if they are fork soft, then we are ready to move on. So now I add some evaporated milk, and I normally add about, I would say 3/4 of a can, 1/2 to 3/4 of a can to the soup. You could probably add the whole thing. I have a dairy sensitive daughter, so sometimes I try to do less, sometimes I do more, but I try to stay on the lesser side for her sake. But it just adds a little creamier texture and a little bit more deliciousness to the soup. So then you'll stir that in, and I wish you guys could smell this. Time to add the cheese. All right, now just sprinkle the cheese into the soup a little bit at a time. Sprinkle it in and then stir it in. It will just melt in so beautifully. And because you have used the flour to thicken it, it won't go grainy. If you haven't used enough flour in your thickener, your cheese kind of tends to go a little bit grainy. It still tastes delicious. But there have been times where I've not added quite enough flour and it just doesn't thicken up enough for the cheese. But you just add all that cheese on that plate. Oh, it was a nice big, it was a couple cups of cheese. And stir that in. Look how beautiful that looks. Okay, now you're just gonna stir in the bacon, that nice crispy bacon that we made right at the beginning. You're gonna stir that into the soup, and it will soften up and become so delicious. All right, now's the time. If you are a broccoli cheese soup kind of person, now's a good time where you can add the broccoli. Just chop it up into small pieces and add it to your soup, and then just let it sit for a little while. You don't need to boil it anymore. The soup is nice and hot, and it will just make a perfect broccoli mixture into the soup. My family, and mainly me, I'm not a big fan of broccoli cheese soup. I just like potato cheese soup. But if you wanted to add broccoli, now is a good time. And I also tasted my soup and noticed that it just needed a little teeny bit more salt, and oh my goodness, this soup is absolutely delicious. All right, this soup as it sits will start to get a little bit thicker. Right now it's a little bit on the runnier side, but it is still absolutely delicious. My daughter's gonna be super excited when she gets home from school today and gets to have cheesy potato soup for an after-school snack.